Welcome, everyone. I'm Joanna, marketing manager at BookBoost, and BookBoost is a CRM designed for hotels, for hospitality. Every month, we host these webinars to help hoteliers understand more about certain topics that are trending, what's happening, what is changing in the industry. And today, we are going to talk about guest data. We've been hearing how data is becoming more and more crucial, but sometimes it's also a bit difficult to understand how to leverage it. And that's why today it's not just going to be me. I'm surrounded by some pretty nice experts that are going to talk to, they're going to tell us more about these, and they're going to walk us through some best practices and practical advice that you guys can use to boost your operations. So I'm going to start to introduce them before we dive into the questions. This is going to be a 45-minute session, so it's not so long. Get comfortable, get ready, get your questions ready as well, so we can dive in this topic. So let's start with presentations. And today we have Tobias joining from Hotel Tech Solutions and a recent founder as well of a new company in the AI sector for hospitality. So Tobias, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks very much. Nice. Great to be here.
Yes, we're excited as well. Next, we have Thibault from Catala Consulting. Hey, Thibault, how are you?
Very good. Into the rainy Zurich today, but very happy to be here as well.
From Zurich. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have Ilse, the Director of Operations at BookBoost. Hey, Ilse.
Hey, Johanna. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining. And last but not least, we have Willem, which is the CEO at BookBoost. Hey, Willem.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm really excited. My favorite topic, customer data.
Nice. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we've seen how the industry is talking more and more about data and why is it important, and that you need to use data for personalization and so on and so on. However, it still remains as a very hard topic. And sometimes that seems to create a wall between hoteliers actually using their data, understanding what it means and how to leverage it. And that's what we want to discuss today. We want to democratize this type of information and make sure that everyone understands how they can get started. So before we jump into the questions, we want to understand a little bit of what you think about the challenges regarding data. What are your main challenges? So we're going to have a quick poll for whoever is online to answer. So let's launch the poll now. And then you can see what is your main challenge regarding guest data. You have different options. So one, for example, is that it's scattered across many systems. Second, the data is all together, but it is not clean. Third, I don't know how to get started, how to use it. Or fourth, we don't have a team to take care of it. So please go ahead and place your vote to give us a little more information about what is it that you're struggling with. And by the way, we are gonna touch all of these options as well. Either you find it a challenge or not, but we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into that as well. Let's just wait 10 more seconds until we have some more votes. Perfect. Okay, I think by now we've gathered some votes, so we can stop it and we can share the results. So let's see, now you can see it in your screen, and 67% said it is scattered across many systems. I think that's definitely what we've all heard, that it's very common for hospitality businesses. Second option, I don't know how to get started, how to use it, or we don't really have a team to take care of it. Perfect. Thank you so much for voting. And that is also something that is going to guide our conversation today. So let's jump directly into questions. And the first topic is actually about data silos, because we know that that's a common thing that happens today. So Ilse, let's talk, in your opinion, what are the most common data silos in hotels today? But most importantly, how can they be eliminated?
Yeah, and I think actually the vote or the poll really reflects what your question is, right? So we see so many points of data just scattered across the hotels that I think it's really hard for any hotelier just to understand where to get started. So if I had to summarize the amount of data points or data silos that there are across hotels, I think the most important that most hotels have is PMS data, so property management system data, where obviously you store the guest reservation details, the profiles, the history, etc., etc. Then most hotels have a revenue management system, so obviously focusing on pricing and occupancy rates, but we sometimes find that they may not communicate effectively with a PMS or with marketing systems. And there's lots of acronyms today, and then there's CRMs, right? So customer relationship management, where it's often used for marketing, email communication, newsletters, etc., etc. Point of sale systems, so your spa reservation system, your golf reservation system, your restaurant reservation system, etc. Very often those are seen as like silos or they're standalone and they don't integrate into one single source of truth. Just to continue, there's marketing programs, there's loyalty programs. Don't forget that lots of reservations actually come in through OTAs, Booking, Expedia, etc. They certainly don't always integrate with a central source of truth, right? So this is an extra data point that you have as a hotel. And then there's guest feedback, social media, where people post about their experience at the hotel, TripAdvisor, Instagram, what have you. So if you had to summarize all of them, I think most hotels probably have 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 of these systems, and none of them are actually centralized. So I think your question was, how do we eliminate this? And I don't think there is one answer that actually applies to all, but if you look at, I think for most hotels today, they use their PMS as their central source of truth. If this is the case for you, or if you use something which is called a central database, I think the most important thing is to see, one, which systems do I have today? And two, which ones do I want to make, my central source of truth? So if you've decided on those two, I think a good second step is to see how can I integrate all those sources of information to really create, I think, what we call like a golden profile, right? So if you have all of that data from your OTAs, from your PMS, from your CRM, etc., and you store it either in a separate database or on your PMS, that actually creates the golden profile or the central source of truth, I think, as we want to call it. So as a starter, Joanna, I would say, let's start summarizing everything that you have today, and let's see how you can start integrating all of these different systems into one single source of truth.
Perfect. And I think that's a great point to start, because it doesn't mean that you have to do something so complicated that it's going to take you 1 month, right? First step, just get an inventory, like your tech inventory, and then write down what is integrated with what, to get a clear overview. That's a great first advice, and I hope you guys are taking notes, because this is great advice to start making some changes in your operation.
And I think, Joanna, just to add to that, right? I think the baseline of this webinar, at least, is start simple, right? And this applies to, I think, all of the tips that we're going to hear from everybody. But really start simple, because as you said in the beginning, if you talk about data, it creates almost this fear around, oh my God, where do I start? But start simple. Just look at everything that you have today and where you want to be, and that's a good first step.
Absolutely. And okay, so now we're talking about how these data silos exist and the importance as well of having this central view, having a general overview or one source of truth. And one thing that comes to mind when we talk about that is actually customer data platforms. We've started to hear more and more about customer data platforms, and there's still quite misunderstanding on what do they do. Are they an extra system that now I'm supposed to get? I thought that was the PMS, and so on and so on. So let's clarify a little bit the concepts around this. And Willem, you can guide us through this in how a CDP differ from other technology solutions like a CRM, a PMS, and why in this case would they be critical for personalization?
Yeah, super. Yeah, and also in extension to Ilse's points on data silos, there's so much customer data lying around in the PMS, in the CRM, in the spa system, workspace system, websites, membership portals. And the job of a customer data platform is really to bring that data together, to clean it, and to create a holistic overview of your customers and what they're doing in your different outlets. And create one source of truth of customer data, where a property management system is kind of the nervous system for reservations, taking in reservations via channel management, managing the reservation lifecycle, integrating with kind of administrative systems. The customer data platform is the source where all customer data comes together, the property management system data, the CRM data, spa data, workspaces, OTAs, you name it, like everything basically what Ilse just said in terms of data silos. Clean that, unify it, and create one source of truth, and then also distribute that again to all these systems. And then usually a CRM is very closely integrated to a customer data platform, because the job of a CRM, and the name already says it, right? Customer relationship management. A customer relationship management system needs clean data, needs holistic data to create the right relationships with the guest. You can only personalize when you know what's actually the right language the guest speaks, or you can only personalize a offer when you know what's happening in all the business systems in terms of in your operation. So the customer data platform brings all that data together and then distributes it to a platform like a CRM to actually create the relationships out of it.
Perfect.
Also, what I usually find a really good use case about a CDP is that it understands the difference between the booker and the actual guest. We all know this challenge in the hotel business, that you receive an email as if you were the guest, but you only booked the room. And this can sometimes lead to some misunderstandings or frustration on the guest's end.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And I think, and this point to highlight is what you mentioned, that it's not just about centralizing the data, but also about cleaning the data and ensure that it's like that you are able to use it, because that's another pain point, I would say, in the industry. It's not just that the data is scattered, it's also that it's dirty, right? And we're going to keep talking about this as well. So now that we know how it is to have what do we use a CDP for, and we keep talking about this general overview or source of truth for our data, then let's look at it. How does it look like in a hotel when you are actually doing a correct data management, when you're already getting started on it? So Thibault, could you illustrate the impact of correct data management in a hotel? Maybe if you have some examples or stories that you can share in that sense, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, for me, in revenue management, it all starts by having clean data. If you don't have clean data, all the rest will fall apart, because you will base your decision, you will base your tactics, your strategy, everything will be based on data. And talking about dirty, garbage in, garbage out, in a way that if you have garbage data, you will have garbage decision and so on. So when we take over some properties, the first thing we do, we look at the data to ensure everything is accurate, to make sure everything is clean, because if not, we won't be able to do anything else. So it will be like quite secondary. But for me, for example, like having clean data, we'll be able to have a clean segmentation, a clean channel mix, and understanding your customer, and then you will be able to craft your strategy and tactics more accurately. Then you have another element which is linked to upselling and hyper personalization, which I do believe right now with the tech and the new wave of guest what they are looking for. Hyper personalization is the answer to a lot of things, and now they're looking for even more personalization, which will help you with clean data. We'll be able to push the right offer to the right person at the right time. That will be key, which lead to better performance, better RevPAR. And then you have loyalty programs that you can push with the right data, because you will be able to increase your repeat customer, because you will be able to increase the personalization, increase the satisfaction of your guest, and then people will come back, which will drive to, again, better RevPAR. And last but not the least, having more data will help you gain efficiency as well in operations, because with the housekeeping, with the F&B, you will be able to understand exactly what the guest wants at the right time, again, which leads again to an increase of RevPAR and total RevPAR. I always go back to RevPAR and total RevPAR, because at the end, that's what matters the most. And I will even push the exercise further, better guest satisfaction. So the clean data, happy customer, great performance, great profitability. And it goes back, and you can even start with the employee, but that's a discussion for another time.
Definitely. And then I think it's really important to highlight what you mentioned, that the importance of clean data goes beyond one area. It will impact so many, right? And then it will help you to make better decisions in the end. Because if right now you don't have clarity, or you're basing your decisions in dirty data, then they're not going to be as accurate as they could. And probably you're going perhaps even in another direction than what you should be pointing to.
Exactly.
Definitely. So avoid a horror story in your property, and let's start paying attention on the quality of your data and how clean is it at the moment. Perfect. And now that we start to get into, okay, so this is how you could start using the data. I think it's also important to talk about how can we measure this? Because if we cannot measure it, we cannot prove that it's working, right? So we need to have in mind, what are the key metrics that we should consider? So let's dive a little bit into this, Tobias. What key metrics should hotels track to ensure their guest data is actually driving revenue growth?
Absolutely. By the way, I love the term dirty data. I think I'll print it on a t-shirt. Well, as Thibault already said, the most important KPI is, of course, RevPAR or total RevPAR. But let's break it down for the sake of CRM and CDP discussion. And what matters here is also the average revenue per guest. So because this metric helps us to identify the opportunities for personalized upselling. But how can you know what people actually want if you're not looking into the data, what they maybe purchased in their stays before? So maybe have a look at the repeat guest rate. Use this as kind of a filter. Track this to measure the effectiveness of your loyalty programs or your retention offers and so on. But also have a look at the upselling and cross-selling success rates. So what is the conversion of your measures you're taking, like the conversion rate of personalized marketing campaigns? And if you leverage your CDP or your CRM, however you're managing the data, to segment guests and create those highly targeted emails or other campaigns, there's so much potential in there. Of course, that's also only possible if you know what your guests really think of you. I mean, look at, that's why I think the Net Promoter Score is something you shouldn't underestimate. If you're trying, for example, to reactivate those detractors who were uncomfortable or unhappy with a specific part, and you, I don't know, took measures, you replaced maybe the mattresses, you replaced or you rebuilt the bathrooms, whatsoever. Try to target especially those people who gave a bad comment about this and try to get them back. Also, on the other hand, those that really rave about your stays, try to get them on board for campaigns where they can recommend you and maybe get a share of the deal, or I don't know, can collect some kind of points whatsoever. And with that, you can also then have a look at what are the what's the ancillary revenue per guest, like what else can you upsell to them? Is that maybe a leisure guest, and did they consume some kind of spa treatment or a restaurant package, I don't know what, during their leisure stay? Or is it a business customer who booked himself a slot in the co-working? All those things are easy to track measures or easy to track numbers, and you don't necessarily even need a CDP for that. It's usually all in the system. However, of course, a CDP or CRM helps a lot to get faster to the point and get those target groups and those campaigns ready.
Absolutely. And what you're mentioning about So when we look about data, sometimes we think like, okay, we will get the IT department to take care of that or something. But now we are looking into all the different KPIs that you're mentioning. And what highlights for me is that we are not talking about one department, right? We're talking about also reputation. We're talking about operations. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about revenue management. We're talking about so many departments that will get affected by having the right metrics and starting to take care of data. So then again, it shows up how crucial this is. So I think it's great to illustrate this because then you can realize the impact that it will have in your operations.
Yeah. May I add to this that I think transparency is key throughout the whole operation. Too often I meet people or general managers who think all those metrics are only for the C-level and nobody else should know about them. However, I think the total difference, the case is that everybody should know about all of those figures, maybe not into detail, but the general idea of them and how they are connected. And if you help the team to understand them better, I can see a lot of advantages in bringing all those different departments forward and also to create some understanding between these departments, because most often you see those fights also in those not only data silos, but also in those departments where they don't really speak to each other and have their only view. And I think sharing information and sharing KPIs across the organization helps everybody to understand much more.
Definitely. So we've reached half of this session. We are already halfway through our session, and I'm going to make a quick stop to remind you guys of two things. One, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function or the chat to drop any doubts that you might have, and then we will also answer them. And the second one is that we just launched this week a new white paper about customer data platforms. It's called From Data to Delight, and how CDPs impact operations and results in the short and long term. We haven't publicly communicated yet, so this is kind of like exclusive. So go ahead and go check into our website. You can download it today. You can access the material, and you're going to get tons of practical advice on how to use it, what to do, the difference between systems, and a lot of the topics that we're actually discussing today as well. And you will be able to, go through it in your own time. So we will drop the link on the chat, and then you can access whenever you want to as well. And for the people watching the recording, we will have the link as well in the email that we will send you with the recording. So no worries, you will not miss out on that. Perfect. Let's continue then. We are halfway. We still have a few things to cover, so let's keep going. Now that we talk about different KPIs, there's one term that we've been starting to hear more and more about, and is about customer lifetime value. So we want to understand a little bit more about this concept, and also what does it have to do with data? How is guest data management contributing to it? Willem, can you walk us through it?
Yeah, super. Well, customer lifetime value is really the total sum of revenue a brand can expect from the relationship with the customer. And in extension to what Tobias just mentioned, in terms of metrics, you can look at, for example, what is the average amount of reservations or stays my guest has, and what is the average total spend of each of those reservations. That's one way of approaching it. So customer lifetime value encompasses the sum of all the reservations, also all the cross and upsells, all the ancillary services like spa or golf or dining or workspaces. And if you sum this all up, you get an idea of customer lifetime value. Where customer data comes in and makes it very interesting is because when you have good customer data management, you can start seeing what is the customer lifetime value of my different guest populations or my different customer populations. What's the customer lifetime value of my business travelers or my leisure travelers or my repeat guests or my families. And you can start predicting based on behavior what a customer probably is worth in the future. You can also start seeing based on your cost of acquisition of these customers. Do they come via an OTA? Do they book direct via these different in these different guest populations? What kind of the payback is, or the best investments to focus on certain customer segments.
Perfect. And then in short, let's say if we would have to make a quick summary, why is it important that we pay attention now to this KPI? Because for some people, it might feel like, well, now that's another thing that I need to care about. So why?
Yeah, I think when brands become more customer centric, have more focus on loyalty, this is kind of the end metric that encompasses all the metrics around customers. I think on the reservation side, you have a lot of focus on RevPAR, where on the customer side you can focus a lot on customer lifetime value, and it's also really an indicator how effective your different strategies are, your different marketing strategies, your different sales strategies, and if they pay back to the segments, the customer lifetime value of certain segments. So it's also a really good measure to understand, are the strategies, my commercial strategies that I implemented in my operation, are those effective and contributing to the customer value over the long term?
I can give you a small example on this, because I had the case recently. We had some overbookings in one of the hotels, and we look at the LTV of all our customers to decide which one to work out and which one to keep in the property, because it gives you an idea of how loyal they are and how the impact will be on the long term. So yeah, that could be a small tips that we do as well.
Yeah.
Great. I love that example as well. Perfect. So let's continue with the topics that we want to cover. And there is one thing that has been appearing in every question that we've answered, and it has to do with personalization. Every time we talk about data, inevitably, we also end up talking about personalization. And it's because no one's going to deny it. It's super important. However, it also seems that for many people, personalization is related to more work. If I have to personalize now for 30 segments of people, of guests, then that means I'm going to spend 10 hours writing my emails instead of actually saving time. So in this case, the question is for Ilse, and it's actually, how can hotels use data to improve guest personalization, but without overwhelming their staff with extra tasks?
Yeah, and I think especially now, Joanna, with the shortages in staff for hospitality, we want to make sure we reduce the amount of manual tasks that people do and not increase any tasks that they should be doing. So if you ask me, I think it starts really with automation and ensuring that all systems really talk to each other. So people are often overwhelmed, right? When they say, great, I have all of this data and all of these silos that we talked about before, where do I start? But I think the expression do it simple, stupid, kind of really goes here. So start with something which is really easy to do. And I just want to give, I guess, a practical example of this. If you use your CRM or your PMS for guest data, look at, for example, hotels that do more personalization based upon birthdays. Like I said, super simple example, but you can set up automated triggers whereby an automated email campaign goes out, or an SMS or a WhatsApp or whatever, that looks at the data of the guest, so in this case, date of birth, and sends out a personalized email that says, hey, your birthday is coming up, please join us at the bar for a free drink, or celebrate your birthday at our place, and we have this special offer for you, which is a stay 2 nights, only pay for 1. So super simple example whereby you make the guest feel welcome, or you personalize the effort that you're doing, and something that actually doesn't require any manual work. And sometimes I hear people say, yeah, but I still have to set it up. And sure, that's absolutely true. But not doing anything is equally not going to get you the results that you want to. And I think in this webinar, we're kind of talking about How do I make it personal? And how do I use guest data, as you said before, from data to delight, right? Where how do I use this data to really delight my customers? And it starts with something really, really small. Now, if you want to maybe make it a bit more complicated, just giving you a second example, because I think these examples maybe speak to people a bit more. So if you are, for example, a conference hotel, and you also have a spa, then setting up a trigger that looks at guests that have booked for a specific conference, that would actually allow an automated email or WhatsApp or what have you to go out once they have attended the conference that says, hey, great, you've attended conference on XYZ. Now it's time for you to relax. Why don't you book a spa meeting with us or spa treatment with us in our spa? And again, yes, it's a one-time setup, but you can allow for your CRM triggers to look at the data on rate codes, for example, to say, right, these people have attended X conference, and then set out an automated trigger that triggers this, like a booking form or anything really, where you don't need more staff, you don't need more admin work, but it still creates additional revenue and it makes the guests feel way more welcome. So just some simple examples on how you can use this without having to employ more employees or to do a lot of things manually.
Yes, and but exactly like you said, like if you don't do anything, nothing's gonna change, right? So either way, you choose then what it's gonna be. Either you spend a little bit more time, but it's gonna change something in the future, or you do nothing and it still remains the same way.
And Tobias actually said, ensure that that the system works for you and that you recognize your repeat guests. Yes. Like for me, if I come to a restaurant or to a hotel and I've been there 5 times before and they don't recognize me, it really annoys me. Right. So I would love for systems to tell the hotel staff or whomever, hey, she's back again, at least make her feel welcome. Mm-hmm. So that's just I guess a small personal note to add. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have a question from the audience, so let's get right into it. It says, what to look out for when using guest data in relation to GDPR? Would any of you would like to take it? If so, just jump, please.
Yeah, happy to extend on it. I mean, there's many sides of compliance. In scope of GDPR, I think there's 2 fundamentals. First of all, is to make sure you have the right consents from your customers. So in a customer journey, you're allowed to send transactional messaging. You do need consent for marketing messaging. So it's really good to map out in your customer journey what communication is what communication is transactional, what communication is more marketing scoped. And I think it's good to look at where the data is stored and what kind of sub-processors there are and where all that data is flowing. That's the second part of it. So yeah, that in my perspective, that's what to look out for when managing guest data in relation to GDPR. So consent and data storage.
And maybe to add something here, the examples Ilse gave were pretty cool, I think, especially when you're already in-house. You can, all communication that's going out to the customer is a transactional based conversation or campaign, basically. So you don't even need to have the consents for the guests, from the guests to send out those marketing emails, because you can always relate it to this specific stay they're currently on. And therefore, there's a high potential for in-guest or in-house messaging or in-house emails to upsell people. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, thank you both for the answers. And now let's continue. So we have the last 10 minutes of the session. So let's get entirely practical. So now we're going to focus on best practices and tips. So Thibault, you talk about clean data before. So let's dive in a little bit on that. What are the best practices for ensuring data accuracy and avoiding common issues like duplicated guest profiles, for example, or what we've been saying, dirty data?
Okay, I will start with the obvious, but it's not that obvious for many hotels, to have a strong tech stack in place where they're all communicating to each other, like not only one way, but 2 ways. Too many times I see some great tech stack, but not communicating with each other. And that creates a lot of duplicate, a lot of manual input, which will lead to human error and so on. So if you build your tech stack correctly, if you build your tech stack quite seamlessly and all connected to each other in two ways, that will solve 90% of your issues from the get-go. So that's a really big one. Then quite regularly, for example, with my team, we do some data audit just to make sure the data are clean. There's not too many duplicate in terms of company accounts, agencies, guest names. The front office as well will do some regular audits, and we'll do some merging processes to make sure we keep the system quite clean. As well have a way and a process, an SOP on a way of standardizing the way you input data in the systems. That we all talk about the same language and we all use the system the same ways. That will solve a lot of issues, like the way you record first name, last name, credit card. Well, that's a touchy subject, but to make sure you have a right standardization of data. As well, you have some tools which today with the CRM or as well with the PMS, which with a one click they can detect with AI those duplicate and can do the merger for you. If, for example, if the email address was the same, but there were like a comma, which was a bit different, the system will recognize, like, do you want to merge those two systems? Yes or no, and then you can merge them together. So you have those tools which can help you to reduce the errors. And lastly, because once you have solved all the tech issues, you need to solve the human issues, and that's more about training the staff about how to use the data, how to insert the data in the system, and as well how to use those systems. Because at the end, you can have the best and Rolls Royce in terms of tech stacks, but if the team don't use them or don't like them and push them away, then it's completely not worth it. So you need to make sure the team is on board, they are trained, and they know to use it.
Absolutely. And I think that part that you highlight about this stuff is incredibly important. We actually had a conversation a few months ago about how to create your tech stack and so on. And I remember, Tobias, this is one of the points that you mentioned before, right? Like you need to talk to the people that is in your team because they will be the ones using it. So you need to include them in that whole training, in that whole part of getting familiar with the system. Because I agree with you, Thibault, like it won't matter if you have the best system, but your team is not using it. They don't feel encouraged to it. They don't understand it even, right? Perfect.
I want to add something to that because I think if you're thinking about making the life easier of your staff, ask them to just pay attention to what they're actually doing, because we're all in our jobs. We're doing them maybe 5-10 years already and have the same routine. And sometimes what we do, we don't even think about it. We just do it. Even though sometimes it's just a really stupid, repetitive task. And to ask your staff and your colleagues to just please write down what are you doing all day long. Pay attention to yourself over the next 2 weeks, and then let's gather this information and have some kind of process map and see and get together not only what processes do you have, which one of them are really taking a long time, and by the way, which of them are really annoying. And you do them because you have to do them, but which really peep you off. And with that information, you have a great basis of looking around what's possible on the market, and maybe even look around, as Thibault said, what's possible, or what do you have in place in terms of data inventory. List all those places where you have data stored, which is the leading system, where does the PMS get its data from, or where does it send it. You can create with this information some kind of system communication map, a simple diagram. It really doesn't have to be posh. You can even do it with Post-its on some wall and just draw some lines across and see how they talk to each other. And you will really see, and that's the main thing, you visualize fast in this way where the gaps are in this data analysis. And with these gaps, you can go to your system providers and tell them, hey guys, can we fill this gap? And if not, how can I make this possible with maybe somebody else? And this takes time, of course. But on the long run, this is worth doing this practice. And maybe you even put this together with a guest touch point review, where you have a look at all those guest touch points where guests either put their data in, or where you handle data, or where they get in touch with some kind of system that you own. And yeah, that's, I think, an easy but good start to think about how to approach those issues.
Yes, and we mentioned before, right? Like just like when Ilse was saying, like it doesn't really need to be a big thing. You can just grab a piece of paper and start writing, but get some clarity and just take the first step towards it. So definitely. Okay, we're gonna continue with the last questions that we have for today. And this is actually one of my favorites, because we're always trying to give actionable advice, like how hoteliers can leverage the low-hanging fruit, the quick wins, without thinking about dramatic changes, right? So let's dive into what are some quick wins hoteliers can achieve with guest data that don't require massive tech overhauls. Tobias.
Well, I think knowing your processes, as I said just a minute before, is key to all that. And knowing your processes starts with documenting them, not in a very posh way. It's really enough if you really think about what you're doing. And with that information, take on one of those annoying tasks one by one, and think about, maybe there's even already something in place, but and the system you have in place already had an update, but you're doing it the way you're doing it for the last 5 years, but because nobody really thought about it because you didn't have the time. That's well, one important step. And with this process knowledge, you can basically, yeah, it's a good start to cover all those other different topics as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. What we've tried to do with this webinar today, with this session, is show you actionable advice, tips that you can start doing, quick actions, but also discuss how is the landscape changing, how is the industry changing, and why is the data is so crucial nowadays. So we highly encourage you to take a look at your tech stack, at your operations, and just think about whether you are leveraging your guest data today or not, because believe it or not, it's your best asset in order to ensure clean operations and higher revenue as well. With that said, we have reached the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much to our panelists for all the knowledge you've shared today, all the advice, and thank you so much for our audience today. If you are watching the recording, thank you for watching as well, and see you next month for our next webinar, where we will talk about multi-property hotels and how to manage them. So thank you so much, and see you soon.